Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. Hope that work week has been a good one and that it's in the rearview mirror. We're brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. If you're still on the clock, we'll get you to the finish line here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Got tons to do as we get to the weekend. Preston Guy in 15 minutes talking Tiger football. LSU's got a new defensive line coach, reportedly. We'll talk about that. It's senior day for LSU on the hardwood tomorrow. I'm here at this point where we're not going to break down LSU and Texas A&M very much with a lot of in-depth analysis. I'd like to talk about Cam Carter, and I'll do that at 1:30 coming up. Should the Saints be in on Paulson Adebo? Do they have a chance to sign Paulson Adebo? We're talking about it. We will have Doug Thompson on in the second hour as well as LSU gets ready for a 3-game set with North Alabama, the final non-conference weekend of the season. So let's get started the same way we start things up every single day. That's with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Look, I think the news of the day, obviously, is a report that Kyle Williams will be LSU's new defensive line coach. In the effort of kind of keeping things jumping about topics, we're going to start with baseball today and talk about Kyle Williams with Preston coming up in the next segment. So let's start with LSU and North Alabama today, tomorrow, and Sunday. We'll see how the weather works out, but that's the way it's scheduled right now. This is, again, the final pre-conference weekend. And at this point, I think everybody in the fan base, I think those who covered the team like myself, and I certainly think that the guys in the uniforms are ready to go play an SEC opponent. But you got one more weekend to lock in and play. And you bring in a team here in North Alabama that is not very good. They're 3-8 on the season. Because we're this early in the season, I can tell you how they got there. They beat Army 2 out of 3 on opening weekend. They split 2 games with St. Louis and lost 1 on a weekend due to weather. They got swept at UAB, and they scored 3 total runs in that entire 3-game series against the Blazers. They are 0-3 in midweek. They've lost to Auburn, Tennessee, and Belmont, who beat them just a couple of days ago. So it's not a very good team. I'll give you just a couple of nuggets on why this team's not good, and we'll immediately switch over to what I'm looking for with LSU. But this is a team whose best player, best hitter, is Jonathan Lane. He's one of the 3 guys who's an everyday starter for them. They basically play everybody they can possibly play, and none of it goes particularly well. But Jonathan Lane is their leadoff hitter. He's been the best guy they've had all year. He's hitting .292 with 1 extra base hit. That's the best bat they got. He's got 2 walks and 12 strikeouts in the leadoff spot. Not a great offensive club. You look at the rotation, and the one thing that I do like that they're going to offer is they're going to throw a right-hander and then a left-hander probably in the first 2 games. So LSU will get an opportunity to kind of keep working that platoon. You're not going to see like 3 guys that look exactly the same. You are going to be able to throw some left-handers in there tonight if you want. Throw some some right-handed hitters in there tomorrow if you want. But you see a little bit of variation. Trip Patterson has been pretty good for them as a left-handed pitcher. He's 1-1 through 3 weeks. His ERA is 1.37. And last week against UAB, this is an interesting line score. You don't see this very often. But against UAB last week, he threw 8 innings, which is phenomenal. Gave up 2 hits and 1 run, which is phenomenal. He had 2 walks and 1 strikeout. How often do you see a guy work 8 innings in a game and have 1 strikeout? That's very rare. But he's a very slender 6'2" left-hander, and LSU will probably see him tomorrow. But nothing that North Alabama does is particularly impressive. Their offense is not any good. Their pitching staff is not very good. This is more about LSU, as really this has been since they started this in the middle of February. And so these are some of the things that I'm looking for from LSU, and it very, very, very much starts with tonight. To me, the biggest thing that I'm looking for before we get into this, if there's a situation where I need a closer to get 3 outs late, or a situation where LSU's got to execute with runners on base late in the game, or there's a key moment in a game, certainly that takes precedence over this preview. But as I'm previewing the weekend, the one thing that I know for sure I'm going to be looking for from LSU starts with Cade Anderson. And Cade Anderson, you all know, has hit a wall in all 3 of his starts. It did not show up in the scorebook on opening day, but he did lose about 3 miles an hour off of his fastball on opening day in his last inning. And then you have seen in the 6th inning, both against Omaha and last week against Kansas State, he has hit a wall. And the statistics bear this out. This is one of those deals, I tell you all the time how I go do some research, and at times the research backs me up, and at times I find something new in the course of doing the research. This instance, it completely backs up what everyone is aware that he's hit this wall, and it is the 3rd trip through the lineup. These are the numbers. In the first 2 trips through the lineup, so 1 through 9, the first 2 times, the first 18 men that Cade Anderson faces thus far, hitters are 5 for 48. That is a 104 batting average. 5 for 48. He struck out 24 and walked 4. So again, first 2 times through the order, 104 batting average, 5 for 48, 24 strikeouts, and 4 walks. That's 6-1. The 3rd time through the order, obviously a very small sample, but an amazing sample. 5 for 8, 2 home runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. 5 for 8, 2 home runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. It's remarkable the 3rd time teams are getting a look at him. So that's the key for Cade Anderson. And the best part about that quote-unquote problem is that that's the most predictable problem you can have. In January and February, you are not stretching out to 80 pitches. You are keeping that thing humming right around 40 to 45 pitches. That's how you're fine-tuning things. You're working your stamina. You're getting your arm adjusted to it. That's what January and February are for. It's cold. You haven't thrown a lot of innings. You're just ramping up. And so it's expected that you would potentially run into some bumps. And the 3rd time through the order is a new baseball analytic thing. I say new, it's a decade old basically, but they determined about a decade ago the 3rd time through the order, pitchers that aren't Hall of Famers at the major league level really start to struggle. And that's why you've seen most teams start yanking starters after 5 innings. If it's not Jacob deGrom in his prime, then after 5 innings, you're usually coming out, and they go to the bullpen guy that throws 100. And so this is not a Cade Anderson issue. This is just general baseball. But it's something the best college pitchers can work through. It's a door they can knock down. And so Cade Anderson, in a low-stretch situation tonight, will have an opportunity to knock that door down. I will be locked in on Cade Anderson from pitches 80 to 105. And I think they'd like him to get around 100 pitches tonight. And that's the most important development for this LSU team because I think they can use depth to build a lineup and build a pitching staff and win a lot of games, win a lot of weekends. But that ace, man, it's such a big deal. Tennessee won without one last year. It can be done. But man, is it a big feather in your cap to have one. And he's the guy with the best chance to be that. He's shown it the first 2 times through the lineup. Teams cannot hit him. They're hitting $1. 3rd time through, not great. We'll see if he can break that door down in the game tonight. You look at the other big key to this game, and this is one that you're just going to, it's more of an eye test than anything. It's the catching, and they need to do a better job. You look at Cade Anderson and Chase Shores, those are the 2 starters that Luis Hernandez has caught for 3 weeks. They've combined for just 1 wild pitch. In game 2s, Anthony Ianson is pitching, Cade Arambidi is catching, and Ianson's got 5 wild pitches. So that's where it starts, because those are the guys you know are going to go in there. And those are the guys that you can more so control who's catching. Of course, you can put whatever catcher you want into a game in the middle, but you may be taking somebody out at that point. So I fully expect, I say this in all honesty, I fully expect Cade Arambidi on May 15th to be a better defensive catcher than he is today. And I don't want to spend a lot of time harping on a freshman struggling early, but it's very evident when you watch the games and you understand how critical free bases can be in this ruthless SEC that even when you're beating some teams that aren't very good in the midweeks or on the weekends early in the season, you're seeing these free bases. And you got to cut that out. And we talked about this in January and early February, like Cade Arambete's taking a big step up in class here, catching. The stuff on this LSU staff is absurd. Anthony Ianson throwing 5 pitches up there. Kason Evans throws 100. You're seeing wicked breaking stuff from William Schmidt that doesn't quite have the command that he will have in his time at LSU. Same thing goes with Maverick Rizzi, who's throwing 97 miles an hour. And it's not like he's catching Aaron Nola here. I think Cade Arambete would be really good at catching Aaron Nola. A lot of strikes, a lot of command, pinpoint control, hitting the corners. I think he'd be great. He's trying to catch some guys that are in early season form and have big-time stuff. Jacob Myers, not that easy to catch right now. So it's a process, and I think Arambete will get better. Hernandez has been pretty good, but they've got to pick their game up, and that's something that Josh Jordan works with them on a lot, and it's something that we'll be watching for 3 more games here. I fully expect, like I have the last few weeks, that LSU will take care of their business this weekend. I don't have a lot of concerns that things will go sideways. I just don't think North Alabama is very good, but it's baseball. North Dakota State's terrible, and they took control of the game on Tuesday right from the jump. With LSU's best arms out there, I feel like they're going to be in control. I'll be watching for some ancillary things. Cade Anderson, 3rd trip through the order, and the catching has got to get better. We'll talk about LSU's offense as we go forward in the show today, but LSU's got to get off to a good start, control the weekend, and then we'll get to SEC play coming up next week. So much looking forward to that. That's our opening drive, brought to you by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Good time to remind you, it is a Lenten Friday. My wife texted me that just a minute ago, and I hadn't really thought about that this morning, but that's the case. And if you're looking to abstain from meat and want some great seafood, no better spot than Corks. They've got phenomenal jumbo Gulf fried shrimp. They've got phenomenal crispy, clean fried catfish, those shoestring fries, hush puppies, crawfish etouffee, all of it. You want to get kind of a more hearty meal? They can do a baked potato with crawfish etouffee over the top of it, and those jumbo shrimp on the top of that. It's pretty good. For a Lenten Friday, all Lenten season long. You want to get something that's a little on the seafood side, Corks has got you covered. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. We'll come back talking Kyle Williams, LSU's new defensive line coach, with Preston Guy. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety's a big deal in the bathroom, especially as folks get up in age. If there's someone in your life who's getting up there in age a little bit but wants to stay home, might have a hazardous situation here and there in the bathroom, do what you can to mitigate it. You can't completely eliminate that risk, but you can mitigate it. And David Duvall and his team do that kind of stuff all the time. Non-slip floors, guardrails around the slippery places. They can do a walk-in tub. They can do showers with a bench in them. All that is very, very doable, and it's stuff they do all the time. So if that's something you're interested in, start that process with a free consultation today. That doesn't cost you anything to have David Duvall and his team come over and kind of see what your space looks like and what they can do for you. It's David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
Hope your work week's been a good one. Thanks for hanging out with us here on this Friday. It's the Hunt Palmer Show, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Time to talk some Tiger football. For that, we go with our guy, Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Joins us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Preston, how are you?
Hi, what's going on, man?
Well, they're hiring defensive line coaches, reportedly. So let's talk about it. Obviously, a big gut punch last week when Bo Davis decided to leave for the NFL, and the search was on for a new position coach, I guess the 8th one in 6 years or so. And it sounds like they've landed on Kyle Williams. What do you make of that news?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway with LSU and its defensive line coaching position, you need continuity at that position very badly. And ultimately, this is why you pay a coach, 10-year, $100 million contract that's 90% guaranteed, because you need his 30 years of expertise to be able to look into coaches and figure out if they're going to be a good fit and able to recruit and develop elite players. Kyle Williams is a guy who has never coached at the collegiate level, minor or major. He was the defensive coordinator for Ruston High School, state championship performance there for them. Developed Ahmad Bro, who is, we saw play as a freshman. So, some good signs there that, he is able to develop players, certainly. But a guy who was not coached on the collegiate level is taking his first job at LSU. Now, I will tell you this. It is not for lack of ability to be able to crack into the college coaching game. LSU didn't think they were going to be able to pull him. They thought he did not want the job, and I'm told they had to pull out a lot of stops to convince him to take the job. I guess he liked a peaceful high school coaching life over, the strain of dealing with NIL and college pressure. But, he's now back at his alma mater, and he brings 13 years NFL veteran experience with him.
Do you find this to be a gamble?
Of course it's a gamble. I think there's a lot of people who are out there right now saying that it's not a risk, and a lot of people who are very smart know a lot of good college football, and I get why they are high on Kyle Williams, but I refuse to believe that everybody wouldn't be more confident if, let's say, he had this same resume, right, but also had 5 years of proven development and recruiting at the college level. I'm 100% certain that we would feel a little more confident in that. And, anytime somebody's never done something in their life before, you think they might have good signs, but I'm not saying it'll be a bad hire by any stretch of the imagination here. I'm just saying we haven't seen him do it yet. So until we see him do it, there's always going to be a little shroud of doubt. So, yeah, I think, of course, it's a risk to hire a guy without any experience, but you see why it might be worth the risk, particularly if he sticks around for many years, which is what LSU needs desperately. I believe in the last 12 years they've had 11 coaches. So you really got to right that ship in a big way.
I know we have in the last couple of weeks talked about the defensive line at length, but just kind of your thoughts now that you know who their leader is and his fit, along with what LSU's got specifically at defensive tackle. How does that look this spring?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a quick transition. I think the connection with Ahmad Bro in terms of chemistry and being able to quickly gel, that's a big piece there by itself, right? But I don't think it'll take him very long to get comfortable and set up with the personnel here. And we're talking about a position that's fairly ideal. If you're going to make your debut into collegiate coaching, you don't have to worry about scheme. You don't have to worry about, developing playbooks and all that good stuff. And it's highly specialized because essentially, you're coaching basically just defensive tackles at this position because there's an edge coach there with Kevin Peoples. So he gets to come in, hyper-focus on one position and a position where you have to drill technique, leverage, explosiveness almost exclusively. Because, defensive tackle, basically, hey, the assignment is, are you going right or are you going left? It's a little more complicated than that if you've actually ever played the position, but it's not an overly complicated one. So, yeah, I like the situation he's walking into, no doubt.
I was a little surprised when I was looking up Kyle Williams' bio to write something up for our site. I had forgotten that he was 5th-round pick. I think of Kyle Williams as an All-American, a national champion, and then a perennial Pro Bowler. I had not remembered that he wasn't, the 41st pick in the draft. I think that says something about the fact that you stick around that long at that to have a technical idea of what you're doing there, to stick around for that long.
Yeah, that also caught me off guard when I was looking him up yesterday. I was like, really? 5th rounder? Because he was so good at LSU.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to point out that he was smack dab in the middle of Glenn Dorsey and Chad Lavallee and still made a name for himself. So defensive tackle here at LSU. So that's what an era of defensive tackle that Saban started and Miles continued doing there at LSU. It was a pretty crazy era. But, yeah, you just kind of forget in the middle that he wasn't that highly touted as an NFL. He was a great college player, not highly touted as an NFL prospect, and then played 13 years with the Buffalo Bills. and has a borderline Hall of Fame career, if you ask me. I mean, 6-time Pro Bowler. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, one time second team All Pro. So spring ball starts up tomorrow. We won't get some access until a little bit later on in the week.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you're particularly interested in? I'll give you the entirety of the roster. What stands out to you entering spring ball?
All right, so we went from hyper-focused on defensive tackles to the entire roster.
That's right.
Give me 1 second. Offensive line is a big one I'll be looking at.
Let me ask you a direct question there. Josh Thompson comes over having played right guard and right tackle at Northwestern. You've got a reasonable feel for the amount of young prospects that LSU is bringing up towards the starting rotation. Do you have a feel for where they would like to play him?
Probably guard, if I had to guess. They got that's where he's played most of his snaps at Northwestern, and he kind of has a guard build. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's spring if they're rotating a lot of guys in different spots. I mean, would you? You're breaking in 4 new guys, and the one guy you're bringing back, I mean, he's probably moving to guard as well. You know, Braylon Moore is the one I think will be your starting center, but I could see them playing around a lot of these guys. I mean, couldn't you?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I was thinking about this as I was thinking about writing stuff and talking about things, previewing spring ball. It's like, I'm not sure Brad Davis feels like he needs to have a rough draft of the starting 5 after spring. He's got a whole summer and then probably 3 weeks of fall camp to evaluate where everybody fits. I think it's just about developing guys and making sure they're at the right position and then let them compete.
I mean, that's absolutely right. Just stick them out there. See what works. I think there's probably some guys they've got a really good idea. Tyree Adams, I think they really want him at left tackle, right? But, I mean, let them go do some reps and see what sticks. You know, there's some guys who certain positions, like I remember for me in my career, I played right tackle very well, and I was horrible at left tackle. And just until you get those reps and see what it looks like, you know, just play around with it until you get something that sticks, and then work on bonding and chemistry and all that good stuff. But you're definitely going to have to do a lot of playing around with a lot of these guys. Maybe Tyree Adams is like that. Maybe he was really good at right tackle, but left tackle ain't working for him. You know, who knows until you see him out there.
How big a 3-week, 4-week period is this for DJ Pickett?
It's big. I'd probably say the 3 or 4 week period before the season starts is bigger, right? But in terms of how much he's going to learn, he's going to be learning a tremendous amount, and we're going to get to see if he's what he's cracked up to be. And I believe he'll be a starting corner, or if he's not. I mean, this will be his first time lining up against college players and getting to see how you measure up. Can you tackle? Can you cover? Do you struggle keeping up with assignments? What's the learning curve like for you? So I think it's huge in terms of his personal development. In terms of his pecking order, whether he starts or not, I don't think they're going to do much. I mean, if anything, it'll determine who gets the first team reps when they open up fall camp. But they're going to be doing a lot more evaluation during that period than this.
I wrote this and said this yesterday. Nick Anderson has played 1 season of football in the last 3. He has not played with Garrett Nussmeier. He has not learned Joe Sloan's offense. Like, I feel like this is an important 4 weeks for him. If he's going to be the dude, not suggesting he can't catch on pretty quickly, but like he hadn't played a ton of football and he hadn't played with Garrett Nussmeier in this offense. I think that this is a beneficial time for him.
I mean, it's huge for him in terms of, and not that mention, you know, learning the offense, but can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
That's a massive concern for him. Now, the good news is you got a deep receiving room. They hit the portal hard. Right? I mean, you got Aaron Anderson coming back, who was your leading receiver a year ago. Chris Hilton looked really hot in the bowl game. And you could see a lot of these guys why you could make the argument for they're going to be your number 1, okay? And then there's guys like Xavion Thomas, who's a great depth piece. Kyle Parker they loved before the injury, right? Jelani Watkins, who's the fastest guy on the team, and nobody's even talking about him, right? And then you bring in Barry Brown out of Kentucky, who also has a chance to be your number 1 guy. So that's why there's, yes, for Nick Anderson and the conversation around him, yes, a lot of pressure on him to stay healthy, go out there and play ball, right? But you've got a lot of pieces to turn to if it doesn't pan out with him for whatever reason.
Tell us what y'all got coming at Tiger Bait. I know spring ball is a big time for y'all.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be there. We'll be doing the practice reports brought to you by Smoky Investment, as people like to throw that sponsor in there a bunch. It's just funny to me how that's the one thing we do where everybody mentions the sponsor right after that. Anyways, we'll be doing that. I fill in for Buddy Sanji sometimes and do that. We'll be all over it, boots on the ground. And, of course, recruiting is also a massive piece. During spring camp, as a lot of recruits like to come in and we get lots of stories. So y'all make sure to tune in to tigerbait.com and our YouTube channel. We're going to start up. We'll be doing spring game coverage as well, spring game shows. So it's picking up again. Football season is here once again.
It's always football season around these parts of the world. I know that as well as anybody. So we appreciate some time. Have a great weekend, Preston.
See you soon, hon.
Preston Guy, tigerbait.com. Always appreciate his time on a Friday. We'll come back, and I'm not going to break down LSU and Texas A&M on the hardwood for Senior Day, but Cam Carter has been awesome, and I'd like to share some of the reasons why when we come back. We'll do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. When I say Genesis of Baton Rouge, you should think luxury at this point. It's a luxury brand of vehicles. And when I say luxury, you probably got some names, some brands that pop into your head, and you think, I can't afford that. Just give it a shot. You won't know until you go look. You can check them out at genesisofbatonrouge.com. But the model at Genesis is a luxury brand of vehicles at a reasonable price. Safety, style, sleek, comfortable. It's all there in one package, from the sedan all the way up through the SUV. Give it a try. Go by their dealership at Airline and Pico. Get behind the wheel. Let one of their brand ambassadors walk you through the entire process. You can start your process at genesisofbatonrouge.com as well. If you're going to buy a vehicle in Baton Rouge, you're probably going to be on Airline Highway. That's where most of the dealerships tend to be. Make one more stop. Stop at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Tell them the Hunt Palmer Show sent you in there, and just see what the difference is. I promise you will not be disappointed. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
LSU is going to finish up its regular season tomorrow in the Assembly Center with Texas A&M. A&M's a ranked team. They had lost 4 in a row until they beat Auburn. They're in the tournament, and they'll probably be a top 6 seed in the tournament. And I don't have a ton of interest in breaking down the Aggies position by position for a team that's about to finish 3-15 in the league and go to the SEC tournament with really nothing to play for. It's disappointing. We've talked about it really for
They actually will have something to play for, Hunt.
They will be playing for the SEC championship. That is correct.
And if they win, they'll be in the tournament.
That is exactly right. You've brought up.
It is a factual statement.
You brought up an excellent point that I had not considered to this point.
It's a factual statement.
I'll go ahead and make a note of that right here on the old pad and paper.
Okay,
and
good.
we'll revisit that at a different time.
All
right. However, I did want to take some time to just talk about Cam Carter, because Cam Carter left a really good basketball program at Kansas State, where he had been to an Elite Eight as a starter, and wanted to come home and play for the Purple and Gold. He's from Donaldsonville, wanted to come back and play for LSU. He said repeatedly that meant a ton to him. We talked to him post-game a few times in November and December, and he talked about that repeatedly, like I said. And LSU is not really in a position to go get the elite of the elite transfers. We'll see when they spend a little bit more money, but generally speaking, to be successful at LSU right now, you're going to have to identify traits and characteristics of talented players and bring them in and develop them into a much better player than they probably were elsewhere. And when you say that, well, you're playing in the kids into the pool. Wait a second. Like, I'm talking about guys like Dalton Connect from Tennessee, who they found at basically a junior college. I'm talking about Janai Broom at Auburn, who was at Morehead State and has blossomed into a superstar player. Like, LSU's never going to get Cooper Flagg. I'm talking about Mark Sears at Alabama, who came from Ohio and has developed in a system. That's how LSU is going to have to do this. Now, you're going to have to identify those guys and spend a little bit more money than they have, and you'll hope. But guys like Cam Carter can pan out. And LSU's kind of had one guy a year do that. KJ Williams did that. I thought that Jordan Wright had a good year last year. And Cam Carter this year has done exactly what you hope you can have a guy come in and do. It reminds me a little bit of Tari Eason. Now, Tari Eason was 6'9" and a better athlete and is an NBA player, and I don't think Cam Carter is, but Tari Eason came to LSU and made a huge jump. And Cam Carter came to LSU and made a huge jump. He deserves a ton of credit for that. The LSU coaching staff deserves credit for that. Now, the rest of the guys did not, and you've gone into lower levels, and you've tried to pick guys who have had real good careers at lower levels and bring them up to the SEC, and that hasn't really worked out. You could point to a lot of examples of that over the last 3 years. I'm not here to drag kids down, but the basketball team's not that big. Just look at the guys they've gotten who have transferred over the last 3 years from smaller schools that they've come in. A lot of times it has not translated. But look at the jump that Cam Carter made this year from his third year in college at Kansas State to his fourth year at LSU. He went up 2 points per game from 14.6 to 16.8. From a field goal perspective, he went from a 39% shooter to a 44% shooter. That's from an inefficient, low-level player to a more efficient, that's an average field goal percentage for a guard. Shooting 44%, that's good. I mean, it's a good field goal percentage. But this is where the big jump actually came. And this is where, when Matt McMahon was talking about Cam Carter, when they got him in the transfer portal last summer and in preseason workouts, he said he was not an efficient player last year. He didn't shoot a great percentage from three, and he turned the ball over too much. 3-point percentage at Kansas State. He was a 31% shooter last year. He was 59 for 191. 31%. He's going to shoot 41% this year. That is a 10-point jump. In fact, his numbers are almost identical to this point. He shot 191 threes last year. He shot 188 this year, 3 less. So it's basically the same. He's gone from 59 makes to 76. That is 17 more makes. Incredibly efficient, an incredible jump in Cam Carter. And that's going from a really good Big 12 into a really good SEC. He's upped his free throw percentage by 2 points, 84 to 86%. And then the turnover number, it's been incredible. Last year, as a primary ball handler for Kansas State, 101 turnovers. 101. This year, 70. He's cut 30 turnovers off his game. 30. And I would submit that on this LSU team, he's getting more attention than he did last year in Manhattan. And he has driven that number way, way down. It's been awesome to watch Cam Carter blossom into a great player. And I sincerely hope they find some room for him on an all-conference team. I'm not talking about the first team. I would submit he should be on the second team. There are guys with better numbers. There are guys who have contributed more to winning. There is not a guy in the entire conference that means more to his team than Cam Carter does to LSU. Now, you can say that's because of the guys around him as opposed to just how great he is. But the point remains. Auburn lost Janai Broome and they won some games because they have an incredible roster. Wade Taylor's brilliant. He's got his number already in the rafters. He's not even done playing at A&M. But without Cam Carter, if they lose him instead of Jordan Reed in December, I'm not sure they win a game in the league. I'm not sure they win a single game. And it may be just a 3-win difference, but let's bring that up from 0 to 3, and let's go into a different stratosphere here, and let's call it from 10 to 13. 10-8 to 13-5. That you're talking about 2 or 3 lines of seeding, depending on who those wins are against. It's a big, big deal. It's not a big deal to LSU, who goes from not in the tournament or the NIT to not in the tournament or the NIT. But that, I think, is his impact on this team. And every single night, every night, the opposition comes off the floor for warm-ups and goes into the locker room with the dry erase board, and his face is plastered on it. That's what teams have had to look at for 3 months now. And he has excelled and brought his game to a different level for the entirety of the season. This will be a lost season in LSU fans' minds. They will not remember this year at all. But that, to me, doesn't take away from what Cam Carter has accomplished. And I've noticed it. I've talked many times about how I just like watching LSU play. 2 years ago, they were the worst team in the SEC. And I was going to games when I wasn't covering them, buying tickets off StubHub for $4 and sitting by myself in there because I like to watch LSU play basketball. I realized that they didn't win a lot. They're not winning a lot this year. It's just I like to watch LSU in the purple and gold uniforms go out there and play a sport that I like to watch. And so I've watched every game that LSU's played. And most of you have not, and for good reason, because it has not been very rewarding at all. But I have watched Cam Carter go out there and do this every night. And for me, I think to cover this team, to talk to you, and to go the entire season and not have this segment where I highlight just what he's done would have been an injustice to him. And by the way, as an outside piece to this, off the floor, you're talking about a young man who, as I said, has consistently talked about how much it means to play for his home state school and to play in front of his family and friends who have gotten to just drive up the road from Donaldsonville and watch him play. But also, and I don't know who came up with this because all the players have done it dating back to November. And I think there are probably some people in the media who are uncomfortable with it. I don't really care. I think it's a symbol of who those kids really are. After they get off the podium from doing the post-game interviews, whether they've beaten, I don't even remember who they played in the non-conference, honestly. They played a couple of SWAC schools. I think they played Alabama State. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
They played whether it's Alabama State who they beat by 30 or getting dusted by Texas on their home floor. Those kids, including Cam, who's always up there because he's always the guy we have to talk to because he always leads the team in scoring. They come off the podium, they go down, and they dap up everybody in the media. Now, there are some old school media people who I'm sure say that's not professional. Media members shouldn't dap up the players. You're covering the team. You should be impartial and all that. And that's fine if you want to believe that. I don't really give a rip about any of that stuff at all. You're sitting here watching me do this radio show. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing an LSU shirt, quarter zip, and hat. Here we are. But I think it's representative of those guys respecting that there's a job for those people to do, appreciating them for the coverage, and understanding that win or lose, there's a responsibility for you to do part of your job. And as a collegiate athlete, and in the SEC, it's to go up there and answer some questions about it. And they have consistently given that respect to the media, which I think is cool. And Cam's been a huge part of that. So, again, senior night tomorrow, I'm hopeful that those that go decide to go a little bit early because they're going to honor Cam Carter and Jordan Sears. And I don't want to leave anybody out, but they've got a number of freshmen, a number of seniors to honor before the game. That's just the nature of college hoops these days. A lot of seniors playing college basketball. But Cam Carter should get a nice ovation and should feel like he did his job this year because you watch the games, you see it. You look at the stat sheet, you see it. That's a guy that was exceptional all year long. And probably doesn't deserve what the one-loss record says and look, the guy put a Superman cape on in Norman. LSU loses that game by 6 in the last 20 seconds if he's not out there. But he's been that good. So one more time in the PMAC for Cam Carter and the Tiger seniors tomorrow. I just wanted to take some time to give that a mention. So appreciate y'all for humoring me on that one. We'll come back and close out our number one when we come back on this Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Friday shows brought to you by Corks. Get on by for a seafood po' boy on this Lenten Friday. They got a good one. They got a couple of good ones. They got the fried shrimp po' boy. They got the catfish po' boy. Loaded those golden brown jumbo Gulf shrimp or that crispy fried catfish. Fully dressed, lettuce, tomato. Make it happen over at Corks. Government between Foster and Jefferson, corksfishandshrimp.com. LSU baseball cranking up here at 6:30 tonight, LSU and North Alabama. I got a few more topics I'd like to hit. You can find my series preview every single Friday over at louisianasports.net. We call it our series snapshot. And I've got just some subtitles of what I'm looking for each and every weekend. And two of them that I'll get to here. One is LSU's offense. Very, very consistent all year. They've scored 7+ games in 8 straight. 7+ runs in 8 straight games, I should say. They've just really had one 10-inning stretch this year where they couldn't do anything. And that was, of course, against Omaha in the one game that they got nearly no hit in and lost. And the previous day they didn't do much in the late innings. But outside of that, they've been very, very good. They're drawing 7.2 walks per game. They're getting hit by pitches a ton, 24 in 14 games. Their batting average is .333. Their on-base percentage, more importantly, is .466. It's been a very, very solid go early on. Now, I think that you need more than just an asterisk, like 3 big, bold asterisks around the competition because it's bad. And we'll learn more about them moving forward. But I think what we have a pretty good feel for right now is that LSU's not going to hit a ton of home runs. They may hit enough home runs. They're not going to hit a ton of them. And I like lineups that look like the one 2 years ago where they hit a ton of homers. I like the way that Tennessee bashes the ball out of the ballpark a lot. That, to me, is the best formula to win. Now, I don't need to have 5 guys that hit a lot of home runs and 4 guys that can't hit at all, and then it's live and die by it. You need to have a little bit of balance to your lineup, but I like 6 or 7 guys in that lineup that are a threat to fly the coop at any point. And I don't know that LSU has that. So the experiment here, and I don't know if that's the right term for it, but I think something that I'll be watching is like, is this a good way to win games? Like, can you be really, really good by drawing walks? Or an SEC team's going to walk you enough by collecting singles, hitting the ball in the gap, maybe using a sacrifice bunt here and there, using a safety squeeze here and there, and mixing in some home runs? Is that a successful method? I would suggest probably, but we're going to see. And we're not going to learn anything about that this week because you're playing a North Alabama team that doesn't pitch it very good. But I think that's probably the identity of this offense. It was probably going to be the identity of the offense back in January and early February. The question is, like, how much power does Milam hit with? How much power does Dickinson hit with? How much power does Brown hit with? How much power does Luis Hernandez hit with? Those are questions I want to see. I don't know how much power Curiel's going to hit with. Really, you're the guys I know how much power I'm going to get. Braswell, very little. Jones, a ton. And that's kind of it. Like, I think that you could argue both ways with Ethan Fry. You could argue both ways with Josh Pearson. You could argue both ways with Curiel, with Milam, Dickinson. So the variance there is probably going to be the most telling indication of what LSU's offense becomes. And I'll be curious to kind of watch it unfold. Other than that, this week, maybe Connor Ware works out of the bullpen this week. He threw 60 pitches on Tuesday. We know it did not go well. I contend that he's going to be a bullpen piece that LSU wants to use on the weekends when SEC play gets here. Do you want to slide him into a bullpen spot here on Sunday? Like William Schmidt pitched on Tuesday of last week and then came back, Monday of last week and came back on Saturday. So if Ware pitches Tuesday of this week, it stands to reason he could come back on Sunday, maybe give you 2 innings out of the bullpen as kind of an audition to what that looks like. You've seen Ware start 2 games. Do you think you want to continue that? Do you want to see him start this coming Tuesday in a game against Xavier? Or do you want to see him out of the bullpen where he might be against Missouri the following weekend? I think that it's interesting. Connor Ware got off to a great start. I know the last taste that he's got in his mouth is a bitter one because he did not have his command at all in the game on Tuesday against North Dakota State. But he's going to be good. He's got plenty of stuff. Fastball's good enough. Breaking ball's really good. Changeup's devastating. Like, he's fine. He had 7 no-hit innings to start the season. So you just got to get him back up on the horse, whether that's this weekend out of the bullpen or coming up in the midweek. He and William Schmidt are the 2 guys that you're going to see what Jay Johnson thinks of their roles coming up in the next 4 games. I'm curious to see how they're deployed in the next 4. Are they both bullpen guys? Does he want to extend them and continue to do that in the midweek, even if an SEC weekend's coming up? Like, these are questions that are going to be answered within the next 4 games, which come over the course of the next 1, 2, 3, 5 days. I can do math. Look at that. Next 5 days, you'll figure it out. So curious to see how LSU's offense keeps rolling and what the role is for Connor Ware this weekend. Of course, the series schedule this weekend, as scheduled right now, Friday, 6:30, so that's today, 6:30 first pitch, Eagle 98.1 post game at 6 o'clock. Tomorrow, the weather looks to be iffy, so we'll see. But as of right now, tomorrow, game 2 of the series is set for 6 o'clock. So you can catch pregame at 5:30. Myself and Jeff Palermo be on the call for that one. And then Sunday, a 1 o'clock first pitch. So 6:30 Friday, 6 o'clock Saturday, 1 o'clock Sunday, LSU and the North Alabama Lions from the box this weekend. That'll do it for the first hour here on this Friday. Hope your work week is coming to a close. Appreciate you hanging out with us. If you missed any of the first hour, you can catch it on demand. At this point, you got to know where you can catch it on demand. It's anywhere you find your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Of course, you can get us on 1045ESPN.com as well. Opened the show with my baseball series thoughts. Preston Guy talking LSU defensive line coach Kyle Williams at 1:15. You can find that at Hunt on LSU. I gave some Cam Carter some flowers at 1:30. Tiger Sr. has been awesome on the hardwood. We'll step aside for Sports Center. Come back, talk some LSU football. What do I think of the Kyle Williams hire? I'll tell you coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.